Alright, so welcome back to another Into the Infinityverse, a peek behind the curtain of the Infinityverse, the shared fanfiction universe me and my friend Jason Voorhees 2011 do. And this time around, we're going to be talking about vampires. I'm going to be giving some new, talk about where vampires are, certain vampires, and where everyone stands, basically. So, essentially, vampires aren't too different from what you see. Now, the thing of it is that there are, like, vampire clusters and things like that. There isn't really, like, a shared, united vampire legion in the Infinityverse. There are, like, clusters of vampires, and they have their own little factions that they're a part of, but there isn't really a, like, king or queen of the vampires. At least not in a long time. Like, there hasn't been a long time where the vampires have been united under a single person. Obviously, that person who held all that power was Dracula, who, yes, it is Alucard. There was a time where Alucard was, like, the undisputed king of the vampires, and before that, there was someone else. I'm not going to say who that person was, but she was the first of her kind. A queen, if you will. A queen of the damned. So that is the kind of thing. But since Alucard was killed and then brought back as an agent of Hellsing, he is now there are no real central vampiric power. Really, the closest is Millennium. And even then, their vampires are abominations, and Millennium itself is a big player in the Infinityverse, alongside the other major terrorist organizations. Cobra in the universe is the top dog. No one gets close to, no one has been able to get close to Cobra in terms of, power and whatnot. And I might do a video in the future talking about, all the evil organizations and where they're, where they stand or where their seat at the table is. But it is Cobra, and Millennium does have power, but no one really likes to associate with them because they're fucking Nazis. But Millennium has been toying around with resurrection and things like that, and they actually resurrected David Powers from the Lost Boys. He is basically he was brought back by them and serves the Major as a enforcer and an agent for him, and he also serves as an antagonist for someone else in this continuity, our Blade in a way. Valerie Gray from Danny Phantom is, like I said, our universe's Blade. Essentially, what it was that Valerie, after leaving getting out of high school and whatnot, she instead, rather than go to college or whatever, she decided, what, why hunt just ghosts? There are other monsters and creatures in the night. I'm gonna do my best to, to be the one to bump back. So she became a professional monster hunter. And during her excursions into out hunting monsters, she came upon an elderly Karl Kolchak from Kolchak the Night Stalker. And Kolchak took her under his wing and began to teach her all the things all the things he knows. Essentially, being it's very much like a supernatural version of Bruce and Terry from Batman Beyond. So Karl basically, Kolchak basically took Valerie, taught her everything she knows, and she added it to her own skills as a monster hunter. Unfortunately, David turned her into a vampire, and now she's basically told Karl, hey man, I'm still me, but if I ever become like David or some kind of monster, I need you to promise me you'll take me out. You will, if I go too far, I need to know you are capable of taking me out. And Karl's yeah, I promise I will. So, there we are with that. As for other important vampires, of course you have Alucard, Cerys, but you also have I think it's no secret that Alucard does have a daughter in this continuity. That being Sibella. Yes, I've talked about Task Force M a bit, but basically it's a different version of the characters from Scooby-Doo and the Ghoul School, where they're the supernatural strike force for global justice. They're kind of like a mixture of the Suicide Squad, X-Force, and a few other amalgamations. But Sibella is the daughter of Alucard, and she and Alucard aren't really on speaking terms. They aren't really on on good terms at the moment. So there is that. Sibella is just as well, not as powerful, but she does pack quite a punch as a vampire. She is the daughter of Dracula, after all. But yeah, as it stands, the two of them aren't really on speaking terms, and one day we will go into detail as to why Sibella and Alucard haven't really seen eye to eye with each other in a while. As for other vampires that are kind of out there but haven't really been introduced yet, there is like Lestat from Interview with a Vampire. He's out there. There are some few surprising ones, like Mamuwalde, aka Blackula. He's out there in the Infinityverse. There are vampires out there, and a lot of them have their own schemes and agendas, but there, like I said, there isn't really a central power for the vampires. Same with werewolves. There are werewolves out there, but there isn't like a king or queen of those species. And yeah, now will that change at some point? Will there be a alteration where the vampires do get a new central power to guide them? Maybe. Who knows? Like, anything can happen out there. But as it stands, no, there isn't a major vampire power yet. Now, who that could be, I'm not gonna say. But yeah, so there you go. Also, if you're wondering, like, what kind of vampire, like what kind of Dracula Alucard was in his previous years, it's kind of like, the thing of it is like, we've kind of played around with it. Like, Jason and I have played around, like, the idea of, like, is he more like Christopher Lee? Was he more like Gary Oldman Dracula? Was he a bit more like Bela Lugosi Dracula in the past? Or was he more like Christopher Lee Dracula in the past? And, honestly, I feel like we can all just say, like, bit of all of them, honestly. Like, he's got a bit of all of them in him in his long life. So, bits and pieces of all those origins might come to be used at some point or another. So, yeah. Anyway, so there you go, guys. That is pretty much this video for Into the Infinityverse. You guys tell me in the comments below, what did you guys think of it? Comment below, let me know. Other than that, hope you all enjoyed this. I'm Mr. Multiverse. I'll see you next time in the Multiverse.